Welcome everyone to another workshop here at the Test Camp. This is mathematics education for secondary grades. Let's discuss how learning and practicing test skills will empower your test confidence. Those of you joining us live online, we wish you were here with us, but of course you're welcome to contribute your comments anytime, and we'll include as many as possible in the discussions. And if you join us directly through the Test Camp YouTube channel on demand, of course, you can pause or restore or replay that video anytime. Again, this workshop is the mathematics education tests, like those you see listed here. Workshops for the elementary grades tests, they're available over at the other training sites. Okay, we got a question back here, and I'm going to repeat questions for those who are listening to the recording. Go right ahead. Question. So this is about higher math like trigonometry or maybe even calculus. Those competencies are not used to create math ed tests. No, this goes up to probably 8th grade curriculum, maybe a little algebra 1 or so. That's about it. We have separate training sites for the higher ed maths and science, but that's not this. These tests go only through middle grades algebra. Great question. All right, we'll look at the competencies more in just a moment. You likely know by now that around here our motto is prepare, practice, perform. And everyone who has successfully completed the training has passed their test or significantly raised their scores. And that's because test taking is a skill which requires practice. And this is the only place you can come to learn and practice those test skills, especially online, on demand, anytime. So to prepare here at the Test Camp means to understand yourself, but also to understand the test. But you need an honest assessment of how well you know the test content and how well you know yourself, your testing skills. So we start by learning the test blueprint. Now, some of you have been through these teacher career workshops, so you know the blueprint provides all the information you need to fully understand a test. This can also be a good first step to creating what we call my study plan. And that's a schedule that includes reviewing and studying the test content. All right, well, let's learn about that blueprint. We're here today to identify the types of mathematics questions you can expect to encounter on the test. Now, not the question format. We know that in most cases the format is called selected response or multiple choice. We're identifying the mathematics competencies that are used to construct questions. And on this test there are going to be 6, count them, 6 competencies, and we isolate each competency on our individual quizzes over at the training center. Right. Taking quizzes based on each competency provides you instant feedback, so that shows you where maybe you'd want to go and review and study. Okay, so which competency is on this test that was not on, say, the core academic skills test you might have taken or the general knowledge types test? Okay, which one? Teaching, that's right. So instructional strategies and assessment for students, that could be on your test for here, but it wasn't on those tests. All right, so let's take a closer look. We're going to start up there at the top with the numbers as the competency. And you're going to find in the test information guides that are published by the state that these are the main competencies associated with numbers. Okay, you're also going to have to prove your competence in place value, rounding, and estimating. All right, and later in the workshop, we're going to talk a little bit more about this and where you can get the resources to go and review and study for these. All right, here's a sample question. Okay, so it's clear. Remember, we're not trying to solve this. We're just trying to match it with a competency. This is a numbers question. You see all those fractions there. How about this next question? Look what the test writers did. They put all the different types of numbers right there in the answer set. I think we have one more here. Starting with the answer set, looks like all percent. And it is. Okay, so there's dozens of these types of questions on the quizzes over at the training center. Now the next competency is algebra, which might be the easiest one to identify. So how can you easily identify an algebra question? Variables and equations. All right, how about this first example? Variables and equations. Here's another example of algebra question. Whoa. Well, this is definitely one to mark and save. It looks like they want us to write the equation. Yeah, you just wouldn't want to answer this on the first pass through. It would really stop your momentum. This is the kind you mark and save and you get the second time around. Another type of algebra question involves the coordinate plane. You remember this probably from middle school and maybe in high school. Hopefully you remember that there's a need for the coordinate plane in mathematics because it talks about movement, in this case in a two-dimensional space. You think about it, if 0 is your starting point there in the middle, what do you need to know to get up there to that point that's marked? Well, you need to know your position, okay, and then the position of that point. Then you have to know direction. So that's called ordered pairs for the position you're going, and slope for the direction. And again, there's a quiz designed to test all your knowledge on this before you have to go out and start studying for it. The next competency then is geometry. If you had to explain geometry in just one word, maybe you'd say to elementary students, what would you say? Yes, the study of shapes. That's right. So let's look at some sample questions. Here's only the set of answers here. So even without the stem, it's pretty clear this is a geometry question. All right, here's another sample question. Again, geometry questions are pretty easy to identify with the shapes. I think there's one more. So the next mathematics competency is measurement. There are several approaches to determining if a question is based on measurement, but one word pretty much defines the competency. You remember geometry was shapes? Well, measurement is units. Think about units when these are measured. All right, let's look at a couple sample questions. Measurement. Here's a second sample. Definitely one that you would mark and save. You'd probably want to make a drawing. And notice in this question, you're measuring, but you're measuring a shape. So I guess technically you would call this a geometry question, but that doesn't matter. That's not what you're being tested on. You're just trying to identify these competencies so you know where you need to go and review and study. Here again are the first four competencies. All right, at your tables, talk about the fifth competency. Don't say it out loud yet. I'm sure you remember it, but when you do get it, be ready to explain what type of questions might come from this fifth competency, and we'll come back as a big group. Hey, if you're joining us today live online, share your thoughts and we'll include them up here in the discussions. And if you're joining us by the Test Camp YouTube channel on demand, this might be a good time to pause the recording and think about this competency, which, by the way, is data. All right, what do you know? What might be included in data questions? We'll be here when you restart the video. Okay, I'm certain everyone has come up with the data as being the fifth competency. And over at the training site, we identified these types of questions easily because they are simply the facts. Geometry with shapes, measurement is units. These are the facts. If a data question is about the past, then it's reporting statistics. Or even the present, past or present, that's statistics. What if it's a prediction of the future? What do they call that type of data question? Yes, exactly, probability. Now, data questions are easy to recognize also because they often contain images like tables, charts, lists, that sort of thing. Here's another data question. You can tell right away. A graph. All right, so during your training, you're going to learn how to mark and save questions like these. They look easy at first, but you don't want to stop your momentum and invest a lot of time in these types of questions. Another type of data question is how to determine central tendency. Do you remember what this means? How would you explain this to, say, a fourth grader? How would you explain central tendency? There you go. Find out what's in the middle. And here's are some of the ways we do that. Do you remember these terms? Mean, median, and mode? Here's an example. Different ways to tell what's in the middle. The central tendency. All right, and the final competency included on mathematics education test is teaching. That is correct. Expect questions related to both instruction and assessment. Now here's an example of a question related to instruction. Starting down there at the answer set. And here's a question related to assessment. Many more of these over at the training center. We just don't have much time here to finish this up for the workshop here today. So here again are the competencies used by professional test writers to construct mathematics tests. What would be a reasonable goal for a grade on a standardized test like this? What do you think as a reasonable, say, percent to pass? Well, here at the test camp, we require 80%. Now that's a bit higher than most pass-fail standardized tests. But just for an example, if your math test had only 20 questions on it, they're pretty involved. 20 questions, 80%. So you would need, there you go, right, we're math people in here, 16 out of 20. So be sure you check the test information guide or with your advisor or with the district. Get the correct percent to pass required for your standardized test. You will want to perform at your best. However, you will not be required to make a perfect score. This is not an A-B test. All right. Now another way to look at that is, what if you're facing this test next month based on only one of the competencies? In other words, the whole test is just going to be one of these competencies. Which would you choose? Okay, you're going to talk about that at your tables there. And how do you study for something like that? A test like this, do you go first to the less challenging areas or do you go to the more challenging areas? What's your plan for this sort of thing? We'll discuss your preferences as a group in just a moment. Well, thank you for those who joined us live online today for sharing your thoughts. We've been including them, as you know, up here in the discussions. And if you're watching this pre-recorded workshop, pause the recording and do a little self-reflection. Which would you choose, and how do you prepare for standardized tests? Come back and join us when you restart that video. Okay, so good discussion. Here we go up here. Good discussions about the strategies to review for a standardized test. I think we can summarize by saying there's no right way. We've talked about this in the other workshops also. But we do need to review and study, right? And we've started already to prepare. We came to this workshop today. I hope you got something out of this. Was it worth your time? All right, well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Another way to prepare is to select the tools or the resources you might need to study for this test. And you can expect to see this sign along the pathways during your training over there. And some of you have been with us before. You know that this is from messages that have been given to you from those who have gone before you. So in this case, the message is avoid spending your time and your money on expensive resources that you just don't need. Commercial webinars are a good example. The people who've gone before you, they say avoid this because avoid paying for free test information, and you don't need to pay for free strategies like what we've talked about here today. Avoid also expensive tutors and tutoring companies. Now these might be an option for more challenging tests, but what did we say that the content here, the curriculum goes up through what? Middle school. So maybe a tutor for, I don't know what, calculus, trigonometry, calculus perhaps, but certainly not for this test. How about overpriced study guides? Anybody been trapped by one of those? Yes, go ahead. Thank you. $40 you paid. Did it do you any good? Well, you're still here. Many study guides are available either free or inexpensive. We're going to show you just a couple in a minute. But here's what we suggest, and the people who have gone before you, they suggest textbooks. Now that you know the competencies being tested, go to those textbooks and review that study content, particularly from those middle grades textbooks. And over at the Training Center, we post this as the My Resources area. This is where you can find the most popular and up-to-date tools for your success. I think you see a lot of things up there are free. Study guide, $5. Imagine that. Through Amazon, be at your house in 3 days. All right, so investing, instead of investing a whole lot of time and money on resources, invest in yourself. You can practice your test skills. Expect to gain confidence, expect to gain personal independence, and you can pass these skills on to your test. So now your pass is going to provide admission to these training areas. Up there at the top, that's called My Test. That's an activity that enables you to check your understanding of the blueprint, everything we talked about here today. You can also take a pre-test before the training starts. This is the test camp problem solving system. You see up there at the top, the first step to finding a correct answer is to identify, right, the type of question by the what? Competency, right. And quizzes and tests provide an opportunity to practice your test skills while you're assessing your test content knowledge. That really saves you, makes it very efficient. So you don't have to study everything. You just know to review and study those areas, certain areas. Very good. The quizzes are based on the competencies. Yes, go ahead. Yes, you get multiple attempts on these, and the questions and answers are changed randomly on each attempt. And down there at the bottom, I don't know if you can see it way back there, but there's actually a combined quiz there too that you can take a few times, and that will help know if you're ready for the practice test, because these practice tests are constructed with all the features like those you can expect and find on your test day, with the timer, the whole thing. Yeah. As you complete the training activities, you see there's a post-test where you can earn points towards a professional test certificate also, and that guarantees your success. So then you can expect to perform with confidence that comes from the knowledge and the skills that you got during the training. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. There's no better time than now to empower your test confidence.